Well, good afternoon. As we're sitting here at LTV, continuing with the tradition of public access and the tradition of the Hello Hello Show. It's been on the air since 1980. Of course, not to fail to mention the contribution by Fraser Dougherty, Francis Ann, and of course the likes of you out there that make it your business to enhance and fortify the concept of public access, and rightfully so, knowingly and unknowingly, um, directly or indirectly, by doing so improving that concept. And of course, it shows as we have a wonderful entity here that functions 24/7. Uh, the guest today, David Schroder. I was thinking to myself, um, uh, I just met David the other day with his lovely wife, girlfriend, uh,
Wife,
wife, Ellen. She's going to be also one of the participants in
Ellen
the.
Colcord.
Uh,
Yes,
sorry,
Ellen Colcord.
Ellen Coldworth, and
That's
I
right.
I'm like
It's I'll just spell it Colcord.
oh,
Just so Colcord.
Coldcord. Okay,
Yes,
got it. Sorry about that.
that's
But
okay.
anyway, I was thinking to myself the extent of us getting to know each other in such a short time. There's a feeling that lingers that spells kind of level of intimacy and almost well, we share the kind of same passion more or less, but there's something very special about it. So I'm always tempted to talk about the philosophical aspects of getting to know someone that shares the same passion. But from the little bit that I gathered about your endeavors and involvement in the creative aspect of life and the extent of your involvement in maybe erecting the new generation of thinkers and doers in the world of music, in the world of composition, in the world of just general um, philosophical thought that leads into the actual creation of something from something to nothing, so to speak. So, David Schroeder, why don't you give us a few um, sentences that describe your current journey as we speak?
Okay, well, first of all, thanks for inviting me to your show today. And I live in New York City. I'm a musician, jazz musician, that I've been teaching at New York University. I've been the director of jazz studies there. I've been the chair of the Department of Music, and I leave and live. I leave and I live an active life in performing around the world, and as a woodwind player, as a musician, as an educator, as a lecturer, and I do a lot of things with my wife as well, who's an incredible artist, visual artist. So one of the things that we've created in recent years is something where we realize that music, uh, we know this, but maybe many people don't, is music has very important properties that change people's opinion on life and culture and the environment and our planet, and we try to use our art and music for positive change. So one of the things we're currently working on is a project called One World Suite, which is it's a positive message for our planet, which includes music, spoken words, and visual expanses. So we've got it to the point where we've expanded it to a full symphony orchestra, and that's my next big project, is to find a home for that.
So I mean, I got a little bit of the taste of the message that you're trying to send forth. So, what leads to from just uh, 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 cliche conservative aspect of delivering information as far as music is concerned as a part of the artistic display of what life has to offer to us. How did you find yourself being led to this kind of an engagement?
Well, part of this is just making it to New York City, like so many other artists. Everybody wants to come to New York City. I'm actually from the Midwest. I grew up in Iowa, and my dream was always to come here and find inspiration. It was as most people know, as you know, if you're not from New York, if you're not from the East Coast, it's kind of a daunting task. And there's a million horror stories about coming to New York and not finding an opportunity and not doing this. And when I was in college in Iowa, all these older musicians that were going to music school there, they would say, "Well, I'm going to New York. I'm going to go and make it." And then they come back with their tail between their legs and say, "Oh, it's so hard. It's so hard. It's impossible. You can't do it." And somehow I figured it out. And I've been there over 30 years. And I found a niche for myself. And I met everybody that I shouldn't say everybody, but many, many people that I've always aspired to meet that I never thought would be possible. And from that, I mean, through that, I like you, I have a interview series, podcast series, series on YouTube that allowed me to gain entry into so many people's lives. That's allowed me to write my couple books, and just that interaction alone has changed my whole perception of who I am and why we're here on this planet.
So what created that opening that gained you access and gained you, to prevail in the journey that you were seeking?
Well, I think a lot
What
of
made the difference here that actually from
well,
from going home with the tail between your legs and actually making it happen?
you know what it is. You have to be open to somebody has to open that door for you. Somebody's got to crack the door. If they don't do that, then you're just out on the street waiting for the next plane ticket home, whatever, bus home. And I was fortunate to run into a few people in my life. And I'm sure anybody who's been able to pursue what they've been looking for in life, they can recount it was this person or it was this person or this person that cracked that door open, that gave me the opportunity to say, okay, here's your shot, go for it. And that happened a few times for me. That was enough.
But even if there is a crack and an open door, and still you need to deliver the goods.
Well, you
So
need to
how is
be
it?
ready.
And I'm sure there were many people ready to do the job, or it's not like the world is overqualified. If people think it's the other way around, I think the world is overqualified by the amount of people that are capable there. But what is it that actually helped you really continue and somehow find the that breakthrough, or however you want to call it, to
Oh, well, you know what? There's a lot of people that are qualified in the world, but there's maybe they're not ready. They can't get to a metropolitan area like New York City or New York City, which is open to the world, or at least it has been open to the world. When I came, it was wide open. I got here by the mid 1980s, and I was just this young, wide eyed, 20 some year old aspiring saxophone player. And I didn't know, well, let me play on the street. Let me do this. Let me sit in at jam sessions. And, that's probably what these older guys that I knew from Iowa did, but they didn't connect with anybody. So, I mean, I can tell you the specific story, how I connected and how I got my toe in the door.
I already told you my life story, so
Yes.
I'm off the hook here.
So I'll just tell you this. So I would do everything. In fact, the only thing I knew how to do was play saxophone. That's all I had done since I was in
That's a good
grade
place
school
to
and high
be,
school,
no?
right? But I wasn't a good typist and I wasn't good at the computers, which were just coming into fashion in the mid 80s. And I didn't know. So I would go to jam sessions at all these different clubs around New York City. And there was one session at a club called the Village Gate, which is no longer there
Of
now.
course, yeah.
And every Sunday they'd have a jam session that was run by,
It's on
and
Bleecker, no?
what's on Bleecker
Yeah,
Street.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Building's still there, but
I
it's
love
it's
it.
a CVS now,
Many.
unfortunately.
Oh my God.
And
Ah,
I would go and sit in, and the session was run by students from New York University, and they started to recognize, oh, hey, let's hang out, let's blah blah blah. And then one day they said, you know what, we need another saxophone player in our big band. Would you like to play? I said, oh, listen, I'd love to do anything. So I started showing up to their school big band, and I met the jazz director, and after after working with him for weeks and weeks and weeks, we started to hang out, and he says, "You know what? I buy you. I like you. I think you have something." He goes, why don't you come to school? I'll get you into the doctoral program, and you can be my assistant."
Love it.
And
So
it's like,
that's it. And then it's
and that was the crack.
magic unfolds.
He said, and then the guy was really a lovely human being, and he says, "Listen, do whatever you like. We're just trying to build this program." And so I started bringing in famous musicians for the students and interacting with them. And I made sure that all the faculty got paid. And so everybody loved me because I was the money guy, and I was making sure that everybody was taken care of. And one thing led to the next, led to the next, led to the next. And I did that. I finished my doctorate, and I was teaching there, and I was teaching at other schools. I was teaching at the new school. And in 2003, my mentor, this guy who cracked the door, passed away. And I landed the job as the director.
It just sounds perfect, and rightfully so. And of course, I'm sure you're doing. You found your kind of task that maybe you were born for. Um, but for example, when I came to New York, I, my goal was not to fail, not to succeed, but not to fail, which is a huge difference. Because I already established the fact that I don't want to take that many risks in trying to be something that I really wanted to be, that I knew in the heart of my heart that I just don't have what it takes. So that means even if it's 98%, it's not enough. You got to have 100%. And that's the way I grew up in Jerusalem. People were, they practice 17 hours a day like this is normal. And we listened to everyone. We knew about everything that happens around the world, and jam sessions and playing in concerts around the clock until we joined the army. And then we had a pause and a little kind of weird transition, what's going to happen to me, and start shaking mentally and physically. But they all went through it. And then I realized when I joined the army, there was that time, I said, I cannot do this, but I need to do it and I have to do it. So how am I going to find myself not doing it, but still remaining a part of it?
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I'm just going to create a parallel reality that belongs to me only. That's the way I'm going to look at it. And even playing jazz, sometimes I would sit with a band and I would play and they would say, "What are you doing?" I said, "No, what are you not doing? Listen to me, let's do it." So until they realized that I have something there, it's just, and it grew disproportionately to the time that I invested in it, where I came from a reality where if you want to see progress, you have to put that much investment of time. It's just, you don't getting any presents here, any gifts. You have to work and slave for it. So it's funny how the American code, the American concept when I first arrived here was saying, you gotta tough it up, you gotta do, if you fall, you wake up, you stand up. It was a little too simplistic for me.
But you know what? The other part of that is in America, it's probably true everywhere, but uh, most people will say, you're not going to succeed in this. If you pursue this, you won't succeed. So it has to come from your insides. It has to come from your soul. That what is it you want to do? Why did you come to New York? What was it that drew you here? And there's a sense of persistence that those people that do succeed, they figure it out. So I forget who the writer was, but he says, succeed, fail, 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 fail some more, and then succeed. It's that persistence. It's like if you really want to do this, whatever it is that this is, you're going to fail a lot before that.
But also, the system will never dare to tell you that it's okay, it's enough to devote and dedicate a portion of yourself. And that's where they're missing the entire thing, because they need to inform people that they're allowed to be something else also and be good at it. It just doesn't, this concept doesn't exist. They want you completely. They want to see your soul and your spirit and everything together into it, because for them, otherwise spells no go. And even those who wanted to entertain these ideas, they don't have the tools to understand what its nature and how to explain it to you, or to even can I introduce this information to you.
But you
They,
know what it
but do you
is?
follow what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
there's
but
it's
yeah, in the arts, especially in the performing arts, you have to be willing to stand up and show your cards, show yourself, show your soul. And this is what happens when you stand up on stage. And the minute you start playing, everybody sees, oh, this guy's good, or this guy's not so good, or this is the here in East Hampton, there's a Tuesday night jam session at the Mason Hall. And the concept for a jam session goes back years and years and years. It's like young kids going to a jam session to see how they stack up with the better musicians. And a lot of times you're not very good and you get kicked off the stage. But then it's that persistence. It's like, okay, I'm going to practice those songs. I'm going to come back and I'm going to be better the next time. I think everybody's gone through that. But I think in the performing arts, it could be dance, it could be theater or whatever. But that's the thing. Because like right now we're mild mannered Clark Kents, right? We're just like anybody else walking around on the street, and there's two men. But the minute you get up on stage and you play drums, you have a skill that you've shown that all of a sudden everybody sees another side of you. So all of a sudden you move from being Clark Kent to Superman, at least for that brief moment while you're on the
yes,
stage.
yes,
And I think that is why so many people are attracted to become musicians or performers, to have that experience where they can reveal themselves.
yes. But then again, going back to the system, and probably you will understand it better than I do, even though I have somewhat of an experience in dealing with the system. When I say the system, I mean, the bunch that's making decisions, and those who thinks about concepts and how these concepts are going to be delivered and communicated with the potential future generations, so to speak, being dramatic a little bit here. But they would never um, take a moment with the kids that are in front of him. And when I say take a moment, I mean take a moment that has nothing to do with the subject matter under discussion. Just kind of take a moment to reflect. I always thought that it could have been, for every 10 minutes of serious studies, supposedly you take 1 minute of freestyle, even though it sounds like, what is he talking about? But that concept of let's take a moment to ourselves, that separates us from the rigid reality, which is not negative when I say rigid, that just kind of that we have to follow. We have to follow the plan, so to speak. We have to follow the route. Let's take that moment that is crucial for us to maybe re-evaluate in the most disproportionate fashion, meaning that 1 minute can really give you the life back. So you're going back to practice disciplines while you're allowing for these things to remain in the back of your mind. And that's very helpful. And that if you exposed to that early on in your quest for knowledge and quest for uh, education, especially with music, and that musicians are the most uh, uh, vulnerable creatures from most mediums of art, that I found it. I found that it's like, uh, uh, and I always give this example. Like, let's say if there's a quartet of jazz, yeah. If any of the musicians of this quartet will, for some reason, decide not to be on time, they will decide to take his own time for a brief for 10 seconds. Just the reaction that it will cause from the other participants is immediate. I mean, you cannot, and especially if it happens, the next time will be like 20 seconds of some kind of, and it doesn't have to be the drummer. It's just I think quickly enough, the session will have to stop. There will be no going from here. You know,
Hmm.
yeah. With painting, with poetry, oh, there's a lot of room to wiggle and wiggle.
But you know what you were just saying about the jazz group and somebody sticking out. There's a very important business model, like a corporate model within a jazz group. If there's a jazz quintet on stage, if the leader is dictating, you're going to do this, you're going to play these chords, you're going to play these rhythms, blah blah blah. The music could be good, but it may never be great because of the lack of communication. Let the piano player play his chords, let the bass player play his, and it's like this sense of communication is some people in the corporate world are understanding that there's a difference between top down management and community communication, and the, the, this is something that I think is life changing and business changing when people realize that it's not all about the boss. If the boss, because it's like me,
It's more of a suggestion. And the bar
right,
is a suggestion, really.
but it's like when I came into NYU and my boss said, "Hey, whatever you'd like to do, create it." And it's like it created a life for me, but it also enhanced the school. And that model, this is what we teach in music and the arts, that we hope we can transcend into business and in corporate thought, that's sometimes missing. It's all Elon Musk is telling you what to do. It's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
It's like it's funny you mentioned Elon Musk. The other day I thought um, eh, about being pathetic, and then something came to my mind, and then I wrote a poem about it. But anyway, about your signature, dealing with the program that you're involved in New York. Uh, what is the nature of the signature that you had that you created to introduce and to communicate with the people that you're involved with?
What do
What
you
is the
mean by
nature of that signature?
what do you mean by signature?
Meaning, what is it that you brought in in addition to just knowledge, theory, all of these that were at your disposal from being, I mean, gaining education and all this. But what is it from yourself that was introduced to the program that is unique to you?
Well, I came from the Midwest, which may be a different attitude. It's like I actually, before I came to New York, I went to Boston because I thought it would be easier to break into a Boston scene than to come to the Big Apple. So when I got to Boston, um, you could cut a knife with the tension at the conservatory. It's like
Oh yes,
everybody is. I'm
yes,
better than you. He's better than me. I'm gonna succeed. You're not, I'm gonna get all the gigs. And it's like in Iowa, everybody's nice, right? We're Midwestern, and I thought, well, I would never speak to people like this. So when I got to New York, it wasn't as severe as Boston, because Boston's a smaller, kind of more compacted, lot more musicians per square
yeah. And
square
you have the
mile
school there and
because
all
of
this,
all this.
so
There's so
of
many
course
schools in Boston, but
Berkeley and all this. Yeah,
New York, it was like this place where people blew in and blew out, and opportunity came, and somebody needs a sax player, they might call 50 sax players before somebody answers the phone. And so when I got the opportunity at NYU, what I brought was kind, caring, compassion, excitement, camaraderie. And these were things that maybe I got from my parents, from my mother, who was lovely. And, we find that the acorn doesn't fall far from the tree. So it's like how you're brought up, and
I like it that you say acorn instead of apple. That's good.
yeah.
I love it. It starts with the same letter, so it's good.
No, that's Newton in the apple.
Yes, but regardless, you can relate emotionally and spiritually to it.
So you know what? And it's like I've been a teacher for so long. I've been at NYU over 30 years now, and I've interacted with so many lives, so many students, and I've seen different people's students that are hard to deal with. I said, "What do your parents do?" "Oh, they're both litigators in the
Oh,
courts." You
yeah.
know, so it's like, okay, the acorn doesn't fall far.
Yeah, there you go.
Uh, but you know what? You learn to interact with people, and you get inside them, and you try to inspire them. And I've been most fortunate because it's New York City. I've hired all the greatest musicians on the planet that live in New York City.
Yeah, yeah.
The people that are inspired, they're great, they're incredible human beings, and you could imagine going to school and here's all your the legends that you've always heard. That's what happened to me when I first came to New York. It's like
Yeah.
these people are actually playing in clubs, and I can go in and hear them and talk to them afterwards. And that's the connection. That's the interaction. That's what imprints on your personality. You become in part those people because you see how they interact with other people, how they perform, how they move, how they think. And if you stick around long enough, you maybe turn into a conglomeration of those people, which I hope I have.
And you know what, the prototype, and I'm sorry to use these words like, for lack of a better word, the I would assume that you would be able to relate in better than most people that I know to the prototype of the student today that wants to make it his life quest, lifestyle, to be a musician, to play well, and to succeed, and to get all this, the whole combination of spirit and emotions and feelings and body and self and aura and business and all of this together. So of course the changes from 30 years ago and 20 years ago and 10 years ago are evident, because the equipment itself can spin, make your head spin, and you're full of options. That it doesn't take a genius nowadays to be able to understand what is in front of you and how much is available. But through your eyes, what is the nature of this prototype today? How does it, how does it come across? How would I identify that uh, persona, that individual, if I was to face it?
You mean that individual who has something, a spark of
Who has a
creativity?
desire to make it his life project to be a musician and to go and acquire for education and to become a part of an institution, and to, so what is the psyche of that individual nowadays?
Well, it's hard to pick them out of a hat because you have to get to know people a little bit. And the problem with the arts is we start young, and I've decided, well, I'm going to be a saxophone player, and in elementary school I love the saxophone and I'm going to play it, and this is what I want to do. When I started uh, doing auditions for kids at NYU, I tell them and I tell their parents, I said, listen, this isn't the priesthood. Just because you picked this when you were a young kid, like you were picked, you have to go into the convent or you have to go into a religious thing. I mean, that's how most people think. It's like, oh, I've been doing this so long, I have to continue doing it. But by the time you get to college and maybe midway through college, you might say, wait a minute, this really isn't what I want to do.
So apropos that, is there a formula or code of conduct that can kind of guarantees you success? I mean, when I say guarantee, I mean, in a softer aspect of
Well, I don't
what.
think there's any guarantees,
Yeah,
but
no, but
but
when you know what I mean, kind of gets you closer
but you know
to
what's
imagine
interesting.
that that's possible, or
But
that you,
you know what's interesting. Sometimes we would find that students' parents were more interested in them pursuing arts. It's
that
funny
they themselves.
because there's a shift. There's uh, parents or doctors or lawyers or business people. They've done very well in business, but it's been hard work and gratifying financially, but maybe not artistically and spiritually. So when they have kids, they decide, well, you guys aren't going to go what I've done. go my route, and I want you to be a musician. I want you to be an actor. I want you to, and then those people go through their lives, and okay, they may succeed, and then they go, well, I don't want my kids to go through the same hardships I've gone through being an actor or a musician. I'm going to send them to law school, and so you got this vicious
Yeah.
cycle
No,
of
yeah. And, and so, how does your journey standing in relationship to the journey that those that you're trying to kind of bring some sense to them and teach them and guide them and all this? So, how that personal aspect of it, because you're a musician yourself, obviously, in relationship to what you're witnessing with the young generation.
well,
Is
it's
there a
changed.
parallel?
It's changed, and it's changed a lot since I was younger. I'll just tell you this quick story. Around 1998, I started a record label, and I wanted to create music with some really great musicians who we had the idea of creating music for wellness and meditation and blah blah blah. So we put all of our money into a record company, and we were locked into this with bank loans and all this stuff. And then we find out that Apple computers came out with something called the Super Drive that allowed people to burn CDs on their computer. So all of a sudden, I'm taking this music to nursing associations along the Eastern Seaboard and giving out samples, CD samples to nurses, and try this with your patients. Maybe this helps. And I would come back to them, and they'd say, "This music is incredible. My patients sleep soundly, they're happy, and I just want to tell you that this music is so lovely that last Christmas I burned copies for all my
Oh my
relatives and friends."
God.
So it's like so things change. And just to show you how it continued, so we kept this company going through 2001, and in fact, we had enough money for our last ditch record project, and it was slated on the morning of 9/11 in New York City.
Hmm.
So I get up, it's a beautiful day, ready to go into the city, and you know,
Yes, I was actually here doing a show when it happened. So that's
but
like,
so that's what I'm saying. Don't succeed, don't succeed, don't succeed. You can stop, or people will tell you to stop, or but it has to come from inside of you. It's
or
like,
reevaluate the definition of success also would be helpful, because it's just not holier than thou.
yeah.
You see, the thing is that
I guess it's follow your passion. If that's what flips your trigger, if it makes you happy, if you're moving forward in some way and not standing still, that's the point.
yeah, but also people need to be informed that maybe they're not exactly who they think they are, or even can be. Like, but it shouldn't be a devastating moment to inform someone that he is. It's very enjoyable to witness what he's doing, but it doesn't mean that the world is going to just unravel for him because or her because their talents are just exceeding the imagination. Uh, but still make them understand that their work and their desire and energy is vital.
But that was the interesting thing at the conservatory.
Is it fair enough to say that?
Yeah, but it's like all these young musicians, for instance, that I knew, they're in the process of becoming, and so they go to conservatory, and well, I've won all these awards, and I'm going to succeed. But it's like, where's the place in the world for you once you get out of school? And that's what I deal with now. It's like, where's the place in the world for all these young musicians after you can no longer buy their CDs, or you can only make money performing. And then when COVID hit, that was gone, and now we're just kind of building that back up again. So it's like, how do I inspire students? Well, you know what the lessons that you learn are some tough lessons, but you also learn to bob and weave like a boxer, and you have to figure out, okay, how can I use my musical skills to do this. It's funny because
Or
uh,
how do I leave enough room for something else to happen in the
well,
same time,
there's something,
alongside?
yeah, but there's something else could be, uh, I'm told that if somebody applies to medical school, for instance, they look at what you did in your undergraduate or your other degrees. Oh, you're a musician or you were an artist, you're doing these things. We like you, you're in. It's more interesting than somebody going, I want to be a doctor when I'm 12 years old, because then all the doctors have that same person. They don't have the creative spark. So, that's a tough lesson if you're going to spend 100 and some thousand dollars for a music education and then not pursue that. Uh,
The
that's hard.
difficulty is that the teachers must be the same as they want their students to be in order to introduce something alternative, if that makes sense. Because there's no way that there's someone who is not him himself or her herself already that product, that they can actually promote that in the lives, into the lives of their disciples and whatever. And this fear of losing superiority. I mean, and these are things that I've experienced hands on. That's why I'm a product of private lessons, all the way from jiu-jitsu to poetry to whatever. I always had mentors that I spent my last money on those precious moments. And that's why it came with an ad when he taught me, first of all, let's take a moment for me to inform you that noise you cannot create by playing drums, even if you try hard. The first lesson he taught me. Erase that. When you were growing up and neighbors said, get him to stop all this noise, and this is embedded in your brains, in your heart, and we need to get rid of it. There's such things as called power. So he introduced me to power. So my main issue was the inability to play solo. I mean, I could play solo, but it wasn't really a solo. And I knew it. So I was trying to communicate with him that I need his help to approach a solo, how to approach and how to make it happen. And he always refused to discuss it with me. And after 5, 6 months, he says, sit on the drums and play a solo. So immediately I sat and I played the solo. And I realized that what governed me is seeking the moments of the instances of power. He introduced me to power, how this can generate power, and always two sets, so I could always feel his. So I realized that was a. So he said, "What were you lacking?" Let's say I did 5 minutes, and he was full of smiles. Tell me, I'm not going to tell you. You tell me.
All I can say is I took judo in college and I dropped it because it gave me a backache.
Yes, yes.
So I took I
Jiu-jitsu is
took
worse,
I took badminton instead. That was more up my alley.
But and then I realized I was lacking power. So that means I didn't know that power, projecting, radiating power, is much more important than we would ever think. Because how can I hit this drum really as hard as I want? Is now how powerful can I be on the drum? Because it allows me to do that. And it's acceptable by the uh, spectators, because you are telling them and showing them that you can do something that they cannot. And when they hear it, they said, this actually sounds very appealing.
Well, the concept is you understand when you hit a drum or you play a saxophone, play a note on a saxophone or whatever. Anybody could hit a drum or play a note on a saxophone, but the how you organize that and what the meaning behind that is we call that in the academic world non-discursive syntax, meaning you can't say what it is, but you feel it, and if you can convey that non-discursive syntax to an audience, then they're in a state of bliss somehow.
Yes. What I was trying to communicate with you is that actually he taught me the value of being a technique oriented drummer and not subject matter oriented drummer. Because technique oriented, if you trust that approach, it will give to subject matter birth to subject matter automatically. So you're gaining that time that otherwise you would have to spend in order to search, and then you can get lost, and then the way back is unknown and what that. So even with painting, I would have to, because there was no evolutionary process for me becoming a painter. It just happened, and it was overwhelming, it was scary. I already had my fair dose of low self esteem for whatever reason. So that really almost crushed me before I even started. And then I just said, bring something that you're familiar with. Introduce into the equation something that you're already good at. And I found more than one thing. And suddenly I realized that the brush is doing some incredible things, you know? And I followed that and I was consistent. And you know what? The most cliche aspect of that process of preparing yourself for success, supposedly, which I reject really because it's too confusing. Because then you don't succeed, and it doesn't happen quickly enough, and then there's a lot of disappointments before any disappointment is materializing, if you know what I mean. So here I'm telling myself, well, I'm going to introduce my expertise, my something that cannot intimidate me because I had so many experiences with it, something that can fit in the world of art, of painting. And it's almost like waking up from a coma, a
Mm-hmm.
very lovely coma. And in witnessing what I just did, and for some unknown weird reason, I was still had the recollection of the evolutionary process of that led to this painting that I'm surprised to encounter, if you know what I mean. So I utilized my photographic memory. It works until nowadays, like a sweet, delicious, yeah, entity. Um, and what's his name? De Kooning. 90% of his qualities depended on his photographic memory. He used to pre-establish his compositions in his head, shapes, colors, proximity. That's what he used to do. He used to just have it there, then he would go to the canvas, and he's not going to say, "Oh, wait, where am I?" He knew exactly. So he went to the circle that happened to be yellow, and to this that had to be shape, and the elliptic shape that have to be deep brown, and he knew where to place it. He just knew exactly. And when you see his videos, you can see that it's actually backing what I'm saying, because he would go and you would realize that he's just a little too calm, too at ease with himself, creating incredible things. So he's got a surety. He already did the hard work. Now it's just floating, just going, just place it right. That's why when he would switch it, and you can see some of his work actually. I saw some of his at Guildhall. They had I think 10 paintings that are pretty huge. They were 7 by 9, all framed, all pastelish, and they you really, if you were like an average person out there observing his work, you would say, "What is so frigging great about it?" And I heard people behind me mentioning, "So okay, I try really hard to understand that greatness, and it's probably there. I cannot see it." And I remember I volunteered an explanation. I don't know where I had the guts to do that. I turned and I said, "I can offer you an explanation. It's because this guy had a beginning, middle, and end, and he had in mind 10 pathetic 7 by 9s that will follow a certain line of palette, and he was consistent in being that which causes you to think that he's a nobody. But he did it, didn't he? He accomplished it. He he finalized it, didn't he? That's where it lies. Like Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker was lost in uh, in that incident of insult. he encountered an insult that spelled complete disregard for who he thought he was and wanted to be and believed that he was long before he was. But nobody understood that within him. Nobody offered to cater consideration and flexibility and say, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. It's okay. Just continue doing what you're doing. A little more of this, a little more of that, you'll see. But no, he had to go through a violent interaction and say, I'm going to go and I'm slaving 20 hours a day. I'm going to show the world what I'm made out of. But it didn't have to happen this way. Could have
But
happened.
I think it's common that innovators have a sense of tension trying to break into the world, and
You mean it's adding to.
well, they're not allowed. It's like, what are you doing? I don't understand this. Get out of here. So uh, and the innovators that are allowed to actually succeed, it changes everybody's lives. I mean, we could go back and say, gee, I wonder how many people were innovators that were given that chance to innovate, right? So, and
No, because you're a saxophone player, or many other things also. So, what does it mean to break through with a instrument such as the? What does a breakthrough spell?
well, it's interesting. I'll just tell you kind of a sideline here. Um, as a sax player growing up in Iowa, I loved the saxophone, 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 saxophone. Go to music school, go to conservatory, come to New York, and I become the director of jazz studies, and I'm a saxophone player, and blah blah blah, and I start hiring all the most famous saxophone players living in New York City to teach for me, and I'm there, and I'm thinking I've got a dozen of the greatest musicians working for me, and I'm paying them just so that they can play with students all day. They're just playing all
Of
the time.
course, yeah, yeah.
And I'm going, and then I go out and hear them play, and they're playing at all the famous jazz clubs, and I buy their records, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm sitting in my office doing all the paperwork, and I'm not practicing. I don't get to be a
And those
saxophone
that I
player,
hire
and
practice around the clock all day long,
and I'm paying
and they're
them to
paying them
do
for the
this.
for
And
practice.
then I realized, well, I came up with some interesting ideas. I say, so how do I take this creatively? And so I thought,
Join them more.
I just started to say, well, wait a minute. If I could play saxophone, but what if I play this instrument? Or what if I play this instrument? I have all these degrees in music. Why can't I learn how to play other instruments that and use my saxophone skills and my music skills to exert into like the chromatic harmonica or the bass
Very
flute
well said. Yes,
or this Mongolian instrument that I was
yes.
showing you. And then all of a sudden, it's like I'm playing with these other great musicians. The example I was playing one night with the great saxophone player Joe Lovano
Oh
at
yes,
Jazz at Lincoln Center. I was playing.
giant.
He's a giant.
Yes.
He's like my favorite saxophone player, my mentor. I've studied with him, and he trained me.
Oh my God.
But anyway, I'm playing harmonica, and and so at the end of the night, somebody comes up to Joe and says, "Joe, you're the greatest saxophone player. Oh my God, I love you so much." And then they turn to me, "But I love the harmonica." And it's like that wouldn't have happened if I was playing saxophone.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
Good.
so it's like, okay, change your focus a little bit,
I
and
love it.
maybe there's room for you.
So so again, I'll ask the question again. So what does it mean to break through with when you find yourself maybe even almost unexpectedly?
When you
See,
break through as creatively,
when something new is unfolding in front of your eyes, and you know that at the end of the day, it's the result of your investment of time and passion and patience and studies and everything. But what is the shape? What is the composition that spells that breakthrough, that prevailing to stretch and kind of almost like a lava, hot lava that creates more land? erupting from the water, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Well, I think
I,
breakthroughs. I
I
think,
can answer about drums, but I mean, I'm just eager
but you
to.
know what? In general, I think breakthroughs happen when you're forced to do something you're not used to doing, right? And it's like, so you have my book
But
there.
how about through the things that you're accustomed to doing on regular basis?
Well, okay. So in music,
More like from there, I
is
would
music.
like to.
When I was a young student, we used to hang out at music school and say, "Oh, I stayed up all night practicing in the practice rooms, and aren't I special?" And it's like, no, you realize that you're practicing things that you can already play. You're just mindlessly playing for hours and hours and hours instead of saying, "What is it that I can't play that is hard for me to do?" And if I practice that for 20 minutes, and that becomes clearer and easier, then I'll have a breakthrough. But it's like it took me years and years and years and years to figure that out. Like to sit and just practice one little thing, vocabulary in music. But that I mean that's the tip of the iceberg. It's like how do you get better? How do you have those moments? And the moments are when you're on stage and everything just works. You don't have to think. Your fingers move. You hear the chords. You hear the rhythm, and that's when it's fun. But there's other times I was having a conversation last night with some great musicians, and they felt, oh, I'm totally intimidated. And wait a minute, you're world famous. Why are you intimidated? Well, I have to keep my level of musicality up because the younger guys are going to knock me down if I don't. So it's like and it's like I never thought of that. Here's like these really super famous folks, but they're nervous about performing because somebody might come in who wants to take over. So it's
Yeah, yeah,
where does it become it's just about music, but it's all about my position in music and my position in the arts. I don't know.
yeah,
It's a lot broader than a podcast. Let's put it that way.
yeah. And the more I realize that I do have skills to instruct, the more I realize that I can first try to instruct myself in the same level of devotion and enthusiasm.
But let me
Do
tell you this story.
you follow what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say?
yeah.
That is actually we forget that we have ourselves to cater to, and it's just legitimate to maybe start from self-inflicting that attitude and then travel from there into the
But
big
when
world.
we're talking about having multiple lives, like I have played different instruments other than other saxophone players, that's been very helpful to my career. Um, I was in my office one day as a jazz director at NYU, and I get a call from Barnes and Noble bookstores. Just random call. Hello. Yes, so you're listed on a job application here for this young man. He says you're listed as a reference. And I said, oh, he's a good kid. He wants to sell books there. He wants to work there. So great. He goes, well, what's your title, sir? I said, well, I'm the director of jazz studies. And he goes, I love jazz. Oh my God, I'm such a huge jazz fan. And so I said, well, what's going on at Barnes and Noble? He goes, well, we're opening up our new flagship store, and it's going to have a beautiful space for authors to discuss their books, and we're going to videotape. And I said, oh, you should do this for jazz musicians. It's New York City. And I'm talking to the guy. He goes, well, we'll do this if you're the host.
Ah,
And I said, wait a minute, I'm not a host. I'm an academic. And he goes, well, if you want to do it, uh, you have to be the host. So I said, okay, I did it. But so this is the story. It's like I was pulled out of my comfort zone, and it was the weirdest thing. I mean, you do this now, but it's the weirdest thing to sit on you're in the Barnes and Noble studio with an audience, and you're sitting in the two chairs and you have the microphone. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the day. And it's like, wait a minute, I've never done this before.
But you're doing it, and
but all of a sudden I did
yes. Now, whether you believe it or not, we devoured 54 minutes already. Let me just mention David Schroder is with us. And if you didn't get an idea of who he is by now, then I lost my case here. Let me, if you can indulge me, can you read a portion of this and tell me if you can envision a musical scenario to this? If you indulge me, just out loud.
Want me to read this out loud?
Yes.
In the frenzied vortex of existence, amid swirling emotions akin to the I don't know that word.
Temporal, no?
Temperus. I don't know. Good. Brushstrokes on life's canvas, I found myself imbibing the essence of palatable tension, a melange of sensory spectacles.
So, I mean, because I tried this with musicians in the past, where
is this poetry?
Yeah, I mean, it's prose is kind of almost a storytelling poetry that comes together. There's
tempestuous.
Tempestuous.
There
yes.
We go. Thank you.
Read the first lines of the second.
The rising swamp, an allegory of impending turmoil, threatening to engulf not merely a being, but an idea, a notion fermenting in the ethereal mist. Its pungent aroma, an assault on the senses, spoke of decay and rebirth entwined.
Entwined. So, I mean, you know, I approached mediocre musicians intentionally. And I say mediocre, not again, even if I was to tell them you're mediocre, they won't have their feelings hurt because they just know who they are, what they are. And try to give me something from your end, from your medium, and try to think that you're actually doing me a favor by doing that you're going to elevate me to the rightful height, you know. And then maybe when you will see me operating on this new height that you allowed me to reach, maybe you will ascend in a meteoric fashion, something that you would never believe that can happen to you so fast. So in these kind of interactions, the ignition is instinctive and things happen without any warning. And that's what we need to I'm kind of trying to semi-conclude our conversation, if I can at all, to do that we actually need to entertain these ideas because the returns are most incredible. And the amount of revelations are disproportional because it's like you would think, oh, I would have thought it would take like months to find myself where I think I am now just by this encounter. And I think that this consideration goes to what I mentioned before. Let's take a moment. And here's your professor that you look up to and you're almost borderline intimidated by him because he's a great guy, great person. And he tells me, let's take a moment. Like he's telling you, let's chill for a little while. But we're not chilling for the sake of resting. We are giving ourselves an aroma, an aura, a scenario where we can find a new self, a different self, while we're introducing our capabilities with a musical instrument. We still possess these capabilities to operate this instrument, but we're coming from like the wind, elusive.
But the idea of taking a moment is so important because it's like if you're practicing the saxophone, you really learn what you've done when you take a break, when you take a nap, and then you wake up.
And we have 30 seconds. We're going to be here tomorrow as much as we were here yesterday and as much as we're here this afternoon, Monday, January 8th, year 2024, here with the Alolo Show. And my name is Haim Mizrahi. I can't believe we went through all that, and I didn't even mention that we didn't see all these wonderful treasures. That means you're gonna have to come again.
Okay, well, I'm
Thank
here every week. I'm here every week.
thank you very much, David. It's a pleasure. It was really a pleasure. I don't take it for granted. I love it.
Oh, that's fun. Wait a
Have a
minute.
beautiful day. We'll see you soon.
Okay, bye.